Okay, thanks for joining. Today we're going to run through Primavera P6, but I'm mostly going to focus on resources and costs. And thanks for all of those who registered, and I bumped this webinar quite a few times. The last few weeks has been a little crazy, so thanks for attending, even with all that craziness. So I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm coming to you from Calgary today. And actually that previous image, this is what our morning looked like today. So we had beautiful, beautiful snow this morning. And I'm not the biggest lover of winter, even though I live in Canada. But today was really fantastic. Beautiful, light, powdery snow. Now let's jump into resources and let's talk about feedback. Is my mic sounding okay, James? It might just be my end.
Yeah, it was cutting in and out a little bit. It sounds okay again. Yeah.
Okay. Let me know if it does it again. I may need to switch headsets. So I got the better one on, but that doesn't always mean anything. Okay. So let's touch on P6. So I'm going to ask first and foremost, how many of you are using P6? So I'm going to start a quick poll. Because just out of curiosity. So I'm curious if people are using P6 that are attending or whether some are using other things and wanted to understand whether P6 could be a good fit. Okay, we got a variety of answers. Okay, so that's what I was expecting. Okay, excellent. So I will mostly focus on resources and costs in this particular webinar, but I will touch a little bit on basic scheduling, just a little bit. So let's talk about what you can do in P6. So in P6, we can, of course, do scheduling. So figure out the dates with a CPM schedule. We can put in resources, and we can also put in costs. So some of the common struggles are, can I do all that? You know, with the team that I have, how can I do that? And what would be the benefits? So people don't always use all the different aspects of P6. So I'm going to ask that as my next quick question here. So if you're using P6, and even if you're not, do you do scheduling as well as resource management, as well as cost management? So there's often, so a few years ago, I think it's probably towards 5 years ago, Oracle had done a quick survey of some clients, and the results were 100% use it for schedules, 70% use it for schedule and resource, and only 30 to 40% use it for resource and cost as well as schedule. So it was kind of interesting to see those numbers. I feel like those numbers may have gotten a little bit heavier on resources in the last few years, but some people don't understand how they could use the tool and also take full advantage of those features. So the idea really is to try and make it more collaborative, not only across locations, but to get all the data in there. So one of the things that Emerald specializes in, we do a lot of integrations. We've integrated to many, many things, many ERPs. So Fusion, SAP, Oracle Financials, and lots of asset management tools like Maximo, etc. Because people are trying to get that one world view, if you will, in one place, and having resources and costs could require a lot of data entry. So having an integrated approach can really help improve the ability to do resourcing and costs in P6. Now, the other benefit you can get if you go in that direction, of course, is to get a better understanding, not only of your date progress, but also your earned value progress. So how are we doing related to the resources we had expected to do the work? And how are we doing related to the costs to achieve that particular piece of work? So those are really the benefits that we're striving for. And I'm going to show you how you can do some of that in P6. Okay, so let me just flip to, P6, and I'm going to use P6 client today. Now, I do have a webinar tomorrow for seeing P6 ePPM, so the web component of P6. Okay, so if you're interested in that, that's another webinar coming up. So let me kind of give you the lay of the land. So if you're not used to using P6, or if you use it standalone, you may not realize that we can actually have many projects in one place. So that's what we're seeing here. We have multiple projects in the system, and this is called the enterprise project structure. So we can organize those in many different ways. So today I'm going to actually work in these 4 projects that I've got here. Now, when you have the information related to your activities, we can see that automatically rolled up to the project level. So what we're seeing here is our baseline of how much labor we're expecting to use, so the labor hours, and whether or not we're doing better or worse. So a negative in P6 is always bad. So you can see some of these projects, I'm overusing my resources, which is probably not a good thing. Now, of course, it depends on your project, right? Maybe using extra resources, coming in on time or ahead of time could be a good thing. So this is letting you know there could be a problem here. You better take a look at this, okay? Now, I've got my baseline there. I can see where I'm at with my actuals, my at completion, and the estimate to complete, okay? So all those values are rolling up from the details in the activity window. So I have multiple windows here that I can flip between, and I can put them on the screen together, etc. Okay, so the real work in P6 is done down in the activities. And I'm going to start with a simpler view, and I'm going to work with a simplified resource view. So we'll start with that. Okay, so a basic foundational item in P6 is the idea of a layout. So I just switched layouts. So it's switching the view of what you're working with on the screen. And this is I would say the real reason P6 is such a fantastic tool is I can make many different layouts with different data sets at any given time. Okay, so I don't have to keep rearranging. We've got a lot of heavy duty capability in the system. That's really why it's used all around the world on the biggest projects in the world. Now, let me explain what you're looking at. So I've got more than one project open. So I think I had 4 projects and I've got them all open. And I can work with them together. That's another huge benefit of P6. I don't have to check in, check out, and all this other kind of stuff that you have to do in other tools. I can work in more than one project at a time. Now, what are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at our project, and then the project is broken down by a work breakdown structure. So I've got a very basic project in here, not probably nearly as big as what you guys use on a day-to-day basis, but good enough for giving you an example. So often we have some milestones. Often we have some project controls, level of effort, type of activities. That's what we're seeing here. And then we get into the work packages. So that's what we're seeing here. Now, all of those can have costs. Every activity can have cost items. Not every activity can have a resource per se. So milestones, for example, they're 0 time duration, so we don't have any resources on those, but we can certainly have resources on every other type of activity. Now, let me take a look at some construction activities, because I've got some with lots of resources, so it'll be a good example. I think I'll use this first project up here. And I'm pretty sure I have one here in the construction node, which has, whoops, sorry, just clicked on the wrong thing. In the construction node, and let's use this construction, civil, earthworks as an example. So down here in the bottom detail tab, I have a tab specifically for resources. So resources are any kind of input, if you will, whether it's a person, whether it's a piece of equipment, whether it's materials that you're going to need to achieve the project, or in this case, the particular activity. So I have a few different resource types. So I've got workers, so labor, they're classified as labor. I've got some materials, so I've got some earthworks, I've got piling in this example, and I've got what's called non-labor, or in this case, it's equipment. So I've got the dozer and backhoe, okay? So I can have as many resource types. Well, I have 3 resource types, but I can have as many resources within those types as I wish, and I can assign them to the activity. Now, when I do that, they might have different budgeted quantities per time, per day. So what I'm seeing here is I'm expecting to use 50 man hours or labor hours each day to get this work done in this time frame that we've got there, okay? Now, that is coming up with a total budget of 20 to 50 hours. If I haven't started the activity, which I haven't, and I can tell by a few things here, this little green box is letting me know it's not started yet, and I can see no actuals here. And another hint is I have no started check marks, okay? So a few different hints to know that this activity is still just in the plan stage. Now, once I start progressing that, we'll start to see actual quantities coming in here. So in this case, for the labor, it's hours, but in the earthworks, it's going to be in cubic meters. And in the piling, it's linear feet. Okay, so we can mix and match on these different units. And for the equipment, we're expecting to put in the actuals per hour. Now, each one of these resources has a unit price that we're expecting to do the work for. Okay, now that might not be what we end up doing the work for, but that is the plan at this moment. Now, our price per unit could certainly change over the length of the project, all right? And that's what you're seeing here. I don't know if you can pick that up on the screen, but it's $22, and then there's a little asterisk symbol beside it. So that's letting me know that this price is changing during the project, during this activity, okay? So all of this is controlled in a dictionary. So let me show you where that comes from. So we have a dictionary that we can build. And the dictionary can be a big, huge, long list of different equipment, different materials that you might use over many projects. And generally what you like to do is kind of standardize that so you can do some base calculations against between projects. Now, just to simplify this view, I'm just going to filter it to the ones that I'm using in these 4 projects, just to make that list a little bit easier to understand for the demo here. So what this is saying is during this activity, as you can see here, the rate for that laborer is changing over time. So we have that ability in P6. So we don't have to have just one rate for all projects. We can have up to 5 different rates. That's out of the box. And we can have the rate change over time. So this project is using my price per unit, my first rate structure here. And it's letting you know that this rate is changing. Now, if it changes once every year, we can put that in. So it's very simple to manage this. and make sure that whatever you've got going on in your rate structure in your organization is managed correctly, okay? Now, if this isn't good enough, because some of our clients need it more than just 5 rates. They might need different rates per project. If you need something more elaborate, definitely come to our webinar next week. I'm going to show you some of our enhancements that we've done with our P6 calculator tool to have more different rates available. Okay, so here's some examples up here. We can have different rates per project and a variety of different things that we've done with clients to enhance what's already in P6. So in this example, I'm saying that next year, the rate is going to go up again. And in this example, just by $1. Okay, so all that's managed in this dictionary. Now, you might say, well, that's a lot of stuff to manage. If you do need to synchronize that with other systems, integrations can be interesting. The other option is we have our P6 loader that we sell to clients that use it regularly. That lets you push and pull data in and out with Excel. And if you just need it here and there, we can also sell it and help you on a software as a service type basis, okay? So there's lots of different ways to get this data in quicker if you don't want to work through each one of these and just put the rates in here. Now, the other thing we're showing here in the dictionary is the number of hours for that particular group of resource. So in this case, the general laborers, we're expecting to have 40 hours a day for that team. Okay. Now, that could also go up and down. Okay. So you might know you're going to hire more folks at certain times, in which case you can bump that up. Okay. So you have nice control here on modeling your resource pool. And it can be a pool, or you could also split the resource per project, okay, depending on what makes sense. You could make this general laborer for project 1, general labor for project 2, etc. Now, if you do that, you might want to take advantage of another layer in P6, which is the idea of a role. So we would probably group all those general laborers into a role, so we can report on it per project, but also per as a group. Okay, so the roles let you group all the different resources together. So you can do that reporting at multiple layers. And then you can compare. That's really the key thing here, right? How's my general laborer team doing on site 1? How's my general laborer team on site 2 doing? Are they meeting the mark? And you can compare because they're grouped into a role. Okay, so those layers, P6 has tons of nice layering, which brings a lot of flexibility in terms of not only individual project reporting, but also group type reporting as well, cross-project reporting as well. So all that's managed in there. And this is just saying, hey, you changed one of the rates, so you better recalculate because some of the numbers on screen may not be okay anymore. Okay, so we can just recalculate that and it will refresh any if it needs to. I don't think I needed it in this particular example. I don't think any of my activities that I've got on screen are running out that late, but it could be. Okay, so that's just a good safety net, making sure you don't forget to recalculate. Now, once this data is in there, we're seeing some roll-up reporting. So as I showed you earlier, all these activities are rolling up to the not only the WBS layers, but also to the project. And that is what we were looking at the project level. Now, we can put those columns into these layouts, and that gives you that nice flexibility on how you want to report and monitor what's going on with your activities. Now in this case, I've got my materials, my non-labor and my labor hours showing up here. Rolling up materials is a little trickier in a column because they have different units, okay? But you can definitely roll up the dollar amounts into a column. Now right here, I don't have my materials in this column, so I can add that, okay? So this is how easy it is to add different things into your columns. Now, so I have all these fields that I can add. So people might be like, oh my God, that's a lot of stuff. So let me try and explain what we're looking at here on the screen. So you can see I have my budgeted total cost, my budgeted labor cost, my budget expense cost. So I'm missing two costs that we've talked about. We talked about a non-labor, which would be the equipment in this case. So I want my budgeted amount. So I can see here, these are my budgeted fields, and I'm missing two. I'm missing my material and my non-labor. So I can add those into my grid very easily. And if I don't like these names, you can see here I've renamed them. So this is something that's really great in P6. It makes it very flexible on how you can work with these. So you see how I called these, I just shortened them up, right? I just tried to make them shorter so they fit better on the screen. So very easy for me to do that. And I can do non-labor, and I can just put in a dollar symbol, okay? So very simple to get this to be what you want it to be, what your team calls these things, okay? Not everyone refers to the same things in the same way across the world. So this is how easy it is to change this and make it your own, make it something that works for your team. So I just added those real quick. So now I've got all my different costs, and the total should be the total of these columns. Okay, so that's, if I like it, I just save it and then I'll have it and I won't have to do that again. Okay, so that's really a key thing when you're working with P6. So this data is input. I've got my budgets and I showed you the resources, but I didn't show you expenses. So I can also have expenses. So these are items that aren't necessarily, or they could be all sorts of different things. So in this example, it's soil testing. Okay, so those are items that I know I might incur some costs when I execute this civil earthworks. So I would have a budgeted number of tests, or it could be a lump sum. Okay, so I can put it in as one, and I can put in the amount of the lump sum. So let's say it's $25,000. I can put that in, and then it's going to fill out the budget as $25,000 that I'm expecting to spend. Now, that particular item is probably going to need a cost account. So this is another thing that we have inside of P6, and I can tag the cost account related to that. Okay, so this is going to give me another level of reporting that goes beyond activities. It goes beyond resources. It goes beyond WBSs. So it allows you to get another pivot table, if you will, on the information. So in this case, it's earthworks, and it's a subcontract that we're giving out to do that soil testing. So that's what I've tagged it with. Okay. Now, each one of the resources also had cost accounts against them that I put in there. Okay, so you can mix and match it, which is what brings another level of flexibility to the different reporting that you have inside the system. Okay, so I just made up this cost account. It's pretty similar to the kind of cost accounts we see. Most of our clients have a little bit more complication in there, but it gives you a good idea of the way that you can use the cost account reporting as well. So that's building it out. it's very easy to do. We can also build out resources in another window. So this is a pivot, if you will. And this is looking at all the resources on all the activities across all the different projects. So just another way to look at it. Now, P6 allows you to get even more fancy if you need to with the way that you do the resources. So our resources could be budgeted in a linear fashion. And let me just move this layout over a bit so you can see what that means. So a linear resource distribution is the same amount each day. And it's calculating what that amount is based on the number of working days in the given month, okay? So if this activity is starting partway through the month, you would see that. Now, I could probably make this a bit more granular. It might make more sense, and I'll do that. That, I think, will make more sense. Showing you each week that it's the same amount of hours each week. That's linear. Now, you can get even more granular with P6, and you can imagine. So what that is doing, that's letting you totally amount of hours each day, each week, each month, depending on how you put it
in. Nicole, your sounds, yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
Hey, it sounds like it's good again.
Yeah, I don't know why it's being so bad. Let me keep going, and then maybe I'll switch if I need to. But yeah, keep reminding me if it's bad. Sorry about that. I don't know why it's doing that. So you have that capability. So we can get quite granular. We can model quite accurately depending on what your needs are, okay? Now, just because it's in there doesn't mean you have to use it, right? Sometimes it might be easier to split an activity into 2 activities if we're trying to communicate the number of man hours or person hours each week, okay? So these are all things that are inside the system. You don't necessarily have to use it, okay? But they're there. So that can help you model very, very well. Okay, so that's building all the information. Now, once you've built the information, let me show you a few different things that you can do with it right inside the tool. So we might want to look at a cost account view. So let me look at that. So once I've got the data in, I might want to look at it by cost account. So there's lots of different ways to look at this. So this is taking all that information and showing it in a quarterly view by cost account. Okay, so now I can see, I'm not looking at activities explicitly. I can, if I want to dig in, I can see which activities the labor earthworks is on, or I can keep it collapsed and I can see that now by quarter. Okay, now this is important if you're a contractor, you want to understand your cash flows, you want to understand not only your outputs, but your inputs potentially. Okay, so this is why these are valuable pivots on the data that you've input. Now, the data, if you're getting it from an estimating system and you put that into Excel, that's where something, you can do some uploads, but something like a P6 loader might be helpful for doing mass uploads. Okay, so there's different ways, again, to get the data in. Now, if we go back to look at resources, I also probably want to understand whether I've got any potential problems with the way the schedule has been put in and with what's called a resource overload. Okay, so let me just scroll over a little bit. So let me try and explain what you're seeing here. So what this is showing you is that currently, based on the amount of work that we've assigned to the general laborer, either in this project or others, okay, so it depends on how you organize your resource pool. I've got a problem. I've got too much work right now for this laborer group in these two windows of time. You can see that right here. So I've got some work that they're assigned to, piping and installing the retube piping. So I can see those overloads. Now let's look at these three, because that one's more interesting. And what this is doing is it's filtering to show me just the activities that have those overloads on them, are contributing to the overload in that time frame. So I can see which activities are potentially the problem. Now, there are tools inside of P6 that will help you try and smooth out this overload and rearrange this work, because, in the Q2 here, it's a little bit of an overload. In the Q4, it's a little bit of an overload, but in the Q3, it's a huge overload. Now, I might want to see that a little bit better, so I can zoom in. So I can just use this plus sign to get a bit more granular so I can see that in a bit more detail. Okay, so I can just keep getting more and more granular. I can get right down to the day or the hour. If you do turnarounds, the hour would be important, so that you can see where those overloads are coming from. Okay. Now I could do it by day, and I can squeeze this up as well, so I can see a bigger time frame. So I can clearly see I've got a major amount of overloading here. Now, I'm pretty sure the one activity I was showing you earlier, I used more than the 40 hours. Okay, so I have to look at what I'm going to do here. And so P6 highlights that for you. Okay, I might need to hire more workers, get in another crew perhaps. I could try and level this out. I could try and ask P6 to help me level this out and see if that could bring a different scenario to make that work better. Okay. Now I'm going to show you a leveling example. I'm not going to use this one because this is demo data and it's a bit messed up. Let me show you another example, a simpler example, but it'll give you the idea of how resource leveling really can work for you. Okay, so I'm just going to switch to a different project, and I'm going to open that project up. And it's a much more simple example, and I think you'll be able to understand how leveling really works. Okay. Okay, so let's turn this filter off here at the bottom, and let's take a look at this project. And let's open another layout that's got a few more things in it to help you understand the potential with the resource leveling. Okay, so here's a very simple little example. You see we have activity A going to B, C, and D. These are all going on at the same time, and they need the same resource. So of course, not all of them can get done at the same time. So what leveling can do, it can help choose which one should stay where it is and which one should slide a little bit later. Now, how do you decide which one should slide a little later? Well, we've got lots of different options, but I'll use a simple example. So in this case, we've got a leveling priority. So this is an out-of-the-box field. It's a simple 1 to 5. And you could use that to help with your prioritization. Now, of course, these are all set to the same, so that is not going to be particularly useful. So the second criteria we often use is what's called the float. So if you take a look at this simple example, you can see that the float is the difference between the earliest an activity can start and finish, I should say, and the latest it can finish without bumping the whole project. So if you can see here, these are green. They have some room to move around, before they bump their successor, the activities that come after them, and potentially bump the whole project out. So that's essentially what float is. So the idea would be the red ones have no float. They are the longest path or the critical path, okay? And it's because their durations and their logic and their calendars and constraints, if we use any. So if we use leveling, which is a tool inside P6, and it works really well, you have to give it your limits and you have to give it your resources, as we did. And then it can actually try and level this for you. So if I click on this level button, it's going to try and move these around. Okay. So of course, what you just saw it do, it just slid this activity B way out here. And this is where it was. And that's where it went. And it did bump the overall end date, right? It bumped this activity too. It had no choice because it has to adhere to the logic. But you see it got rid of this overload, okay? So these are tools that are inside P6 that can really help you with looking at resources and using the tool to help you model your resource usage, okay? So we have lots of clients that use P6 for drilling. They use leveling to help them figure out how many rigs they want to hire for a given season, okay? And optimizing, okay? It could make a big difference whether you have 3 rigs or 4 rigs doing the work. It could make a huge difference on the revenue you can bring in, okay? So these are things that you can do inside P6 to help you model how you want to run the projects. Okay, let me go back to those other projects and just look at a bit more information about how the resources and the costs work. So I'm going to go back to cost details. So a minute ago, and I think I'll just put a filter on this just so we don't have to look at so many projects. There we go. So I mentioned earlier that the resources roll up to the project level. So I'm back at the project level. Now the costs roll up as well. And the costs, again, are similar to what we were seeing about resources. So we've got the total costs. We've got our baseline, where we're at so far in our expenditures, so our actuals. We've got our estimate to complete, so what's still left to go, and then the total at completion. Okay, so we've got all those values, and then variances will be calculated off of those. So that's all out of the box functionality, okay? Now, if you don't want to use all those aspects, if you don't want to use non-labor, labor, materials, expenses, you don't have to use all of them, okay? We have clients that only model certain parts of their program. But the key thing here is they'll all roll up from the lower levels up, okay? And now that I've opened the projects, I'm seeing the real values. And we knew some of our projects, whoops, I clicked on the wrong button. We knew some of our projects were having some struggles. So we see some variances, meaning we're overspent on some of these. And then you can see where they are. They're coming from the labor. In this project, it's all labor. It doesn't have to be, though. It could be labor, it could be non-labor, it could be materials, and it could be expenses, okay? So I've got a lot of fields here, and you can mix and match as appropriate to get the totals and the roll-ups, okay? So this is all being done automatically by what you're doing in the activity window. Now, let me look at one more way of looking at some resources that I think you'll find helpful. So we can also look at resources in a stacked histogram. Here we go. Let's use this one. So in a stacked histogram, we can also look at the resources. So there's ways to merge different resources so you can look at them together. So in this example, I'm looking at my civil engineering. And so I can filter all the activities that just have civil engineering. I could by time period, or just give me only the activities that are contributing to these two civil engineering. So drafting and lead. So I've got two different resources. So another very simple way to look at the data that I've put in the details. Now, not everyone likes to share the reporting explicitly here from P6. We have lots of clients that like to share that data out via a third-party tool. So this is an example of the same data, but now being shared out through our P6 Reporter tool up into Power BI. Okay, now it doesn't have to be Power BI if your team uses Tableau or Business Objects or Click, all sorts. There's so many reporting engines out there. The key thing is the reporter engine we've built could share it out. So this can be another nice way to share the data, because not everyone's going to have a P6 license, and not everyone is necessarily even experienced with P6. So this is a nice other way to take resource and cost data that's all built into the P6 system and share it out with the team. So here's an example. I'm looking at just one of the projects, so the ReTube project, and I'm looking at essentially a dashboard at the project level, so at the high level. So I've got expense, labor, material, non-labor, total cost in here. And then I've got the details, in this example, by activity, but activity could be too much. WBS might be more appropriate, but these are small projects. So we can see the total costs, the total labor, and the durations. So this is giving us the schedule, the resourcing, and as well as the costing in here. And then in this case, we've got kind of like a heat map on it. So you can see the ones that are more dark colored, and this can be whatever you want, are worse or better, okay, depending. So the blue is good, and the orange is not so good. Okay, so these are really great ways. More and more of our clients are interested in this kind of output because, again, P6 holds all this fantastic data, but you need to be able to share it in a more simplified way. Okay, we have CPI, SPI, so that's getting more into the earned value components. And again, if you're under 1, these are not good numbers. Okay, so these are just our demo database. Hopefully your projects aren't showing these sorts of numbers. Now let's touch on some other sort of reporting output that you can grab out of the P6, taking it into a system like this. So now again, I'm looking at one project, and now I'm looking at the costs within the a Gantt chart, or sorry, not a Gantt chart, a histogram. Okay, so I'm looking at my plan value, that's the yellow usually, and then the complete it is usually in blue, and then the still to come is usually in green. So same colors that we would see in P6 pretty much. And in this case, it looks like I'm trending under in terms of cost. Okay, and that's what we're seeing here. So I'm trending under. So this is my baseline at 62 million. Right now I'm trending under. Okay, so you're seeing that in a variety of different formats. You could do one of these charts. The colors aren't fantastic on this, but this gives you sort of an order of magnitude. That's what these sort of charts can give you. And the deeper the color, again, is better or worse. Okay, so these sort of charts can be quite handy as well. Just another way to look at the data. Okay, so you can also look at different parameters. So we could look at different cost accounts. So we're looking at all of them at the moment, but we could look at the data now from just labor. So I can just click on those labor elements and start to build up the components. Okay, so this is where it becomes very handy to have the data in there, and now you can share it out to the team in a simplified version that they can manage. Okay, Cost variances is another fantastic one. So you can see that we were trending good and then we started to trend poorly. Okay, so there's a lot of nice different graphics that you can get out via, in our case, we use our snapshotting into our P6 report and then we share it out. And then the resource allocation. So usually when you're dealing with resources, you're going to have to work with your resource managers. You're going to have to work with operations type managers. So they need to get that data in a way that they could start to help you make some decisions. So this gives you an overload chart, how many hours they're overloaded and when. And then this can start to be used with HR to say, okay, well, we need to get more civil engineering leads, or we're going to have to outsource some of this. Okay, so this is where the value starts to come in, is you can start to have those conversations with the management team on forward looking with resources. Now, this data is flowing from P6. P6 is the controller. We do all the source documenting in P6, but then getting it out where others can help you make decisions is really, really key. Okay. Now, again, you can do all sorts of things in Power BI, different filtering, etc. So that's all just Power BI work at this point. But the data is coming out from P6. So those weren't good ones to choose. There you go. Okay, so the data is just coming out from P6. And then if you wanted to look at the data in a Gantt chart to see where those different resources were being used, again, we can start to do filtering here. So I've got filters on those civil engineering leads and they can understand what they're working on. Okay, so fantastic way of starting to use that data beyond P6, mostly because not everyone would be a user of P6 that has to help with making those decisions. So the idea here is as these items slide around or rearrange, as you start to update, you can then access that information. Okay, so if you're interested in something like that, we've got that P6 reporter engine that we've already built. It's our P6 reporter month. If some of you got our email, you know that it's our featured tool this month. So we have some webinars if you want to see a deeper dive on that. Okay, I think I've shown you a very quick overview of the kind of things that you can build, cost related, resource related in P6. Very, very quick overview and the different facets of how you can do that. And then get that reporting out, not only with P6, but also if you're interested in some other tools to work with P6 as well. Okay, let me see if there's any questions so far. Okay. Okay, looks like James might have tackled some of the questions. Are there any hanging out there? Okay, no, nothing right now. Okay, well, let me go ahead and I'll go back to the PowerPoint and I will start to do a wrap up. So if you're, what we find is more and more of our contractor clients want to have a better understanding of their resources instead of using spreadsheets and all these other tools, which make it very difficult and cumbersome to work with. And then more and more, we're finding they want some ability to understand some costs. Now, often when they're getting into costs, we do get into looking at some integrations, okay? Okay, good. Okay, so let's just do a bit of a wrap up, and then if there are questions, certainly you can start throwing those at me. So hopefully, if you haven't used P6, you've seen a few things that are of interest, and I was working in multiple projects, multiple resources, multiple cost accounts, multiple activities. So it's very easy to use and work with at many different layers. And we've got a lot of complexity that we can make more simplistic in the way the software works. So we can handle manual spreads, curved spreads. We can even do financial period closeouts, so we can model your actuals very, very closely. So this is base P6, and I was showing you P6 client today. I talked about some other tools that Emerald has built over the years. And we've built these tools because our clients needed more flexibility. So the key one that I was talking about is the reporter tool. It takes the data and lets you report out very easily with snapshots. So that's something you could definitely join us for our webinars. I touched on Loader. That's the one that would allow you to load it up maybe from your estimating system, from Excel, and throw it in. Okay, so we'll have webinars on Loader coming up. I think there was one today. Some of you may have joined it, but there will be others. So take a look at our webinar schedule and certainly look at those. If you're struggling with updating, we have some updating tools too. We've got our TAPS tool, which is barcode updating. Super fantastic, fast, very fast. And it was designed for our turnaround clients. When you have an hour to update hundreds and hundreds of activities, you need a fast way to do it. So that tool is very quick. And if you're looking at just deploying a simpler way to update, we've got our CAPS tool. We also sell the team member tool that Oracle has. So lots of options on updating. And some of our clients use P6 Loader to do the updates in Excel and load them that way. So lots of ways, because updating can be a struggle, especially if you're looking at updating resources and costs. It's more data. Okay, that's where integrations could come in, or Loader could be an interesting way for doing all that updating. And next week we'll have our calculator tool. So our calculator tool is really our Harry Potter tool. It's adding magic into P6. So calculations that you can't do out of the box, we've added in calculator. So I will do a deeper dive on even more costing and resource management next week in our webinar on our P6 calculator. So those are some that could be of interest if you want to go a little deeper on that. Okay, so I didn't see any questions yet. If you do have questions, certainly throw those in and I will answer those. We have another few minutes, and I'll stop the recording.